Newaygo for us, and he's here tonight to give us his presentation. I think this is a bad mic. I'm going to give you that one.
Okay, thank you. I was here before, but I'll just do a brief background of myself. My parents, when they first started out in marriage, they were farmers. And by the time my dad was 23, he had 3 children and operating a farm. But due to just some of the changes that started coming against small farmers at that time, and having 3 children at the time you were 23, my dad transferred over into road construction. And for the rest of his life, he was in road construction, running heavy equipment and so forth. My mom cleaned houses. She worked at a convenience store, worked in a meat packing place. And so my parents were just hard workers. And that's kind of how I was reared. I was reared in a family of hardworking. Before I was junior high, I was out working. I was mowing yards, working on farms. At the age of 16, I had a key to our local bank, and I was also a janitor at a U.S. post office. Both of those things wouldn't happen today. I would not give a 16-year-old a key to the bank to go clean. Wouldn't happen. And at 16, I bought a 72 Chevelle SS, and I walked into a Chevy dealership, and I was able to get a loan. And they said to me, "Your parents need to sign." And I said, "Why?" Because they're not paying for it. And to this day, I really do not understand how I was able to secure a loan and buy a 72 Chevelle SS. My boys, though, you can imagine what they had to say. "Dad, where is that car today?" And what I say is, look at your mother's left hand. That's the miracle, to turn a car into a diamond. And that was just a brief background of my upbringing. And my wife and I, we met in Bible school, and since that time, we've been able to rear 5 children, and we homeschooled, but I also used public schools a little bit, and we also had to use private school because our one son, my wife just could not teach calculus and physics and so forth. And so we've used all different avenues for teaching our children. Back years ago, we never even adhered to the vaccines. We did what we wanted to do. And that's just how we've lived our life. All of our children were born at home, educated mostly at home, and that's our lifestyle. One of the main reasons why I am running, my wife and I were sitting there, and I just said to her, we were watching a program, I think it was in relation to Charlie Kirk, and I just said, "That's it." I said, "We've got to run." We can sit and pray for people. We can ask God to change people's hearts. We can ask God to put the right people into place, and you're sitting there, and it's like, I am that person. We need to do that. And throughout our marriage, we have studied the history of this country. We have read books. We've studied things. And the more you study the history of this country, it is absolutely amazing. It's just phenomenal, the miracles that have taken place. And the last thing I'm going to say on that, one of the neatest stories, I think, that shapes our country is a young man was kidnapped, and he was shipped to Spain. And from Spain, he was shipped to England. He was an Indian. In England, he learned English. He came back to America, just fortunately, before the Pilgrims landed. He's the one that enabled the Pilgrims to survive. What was his name? Squanto. Now, you tell me if the hand of God is not in something like that. If you don't think that one person can make a change, you don't understand history. Squanto changed the course of and just not a nation, but the world. The influence that we Americans have on every nation in this world, we are seeing right now with President Trump. I voted for Trump for the last 3 elections. I'm a MAGA believer, making America great again. But I also believe in making Michigan great again. I have sat on a school board for 2 terms. This year is my last term. I also sit on the State Education Bylaws and Resolution Committee for Michigan Association of School Boards. I'm serving my 3rd year there. I've also served 7 years as a chairman of the board for Pregnancy Center. So I believe that life begins at conception. And also, I spent 35 years in the construction industry. Right now, I'm on one of the largest projects in Michigan right now, in Muskegon. I'm on a $220 million renovation program on the old Shaw Walker building. I'm a senior superintendent there. I understand large budgets. I understand MISHDA and how that works in quote-unquote affordable housing. Because there's some things there I don't like the way it's run. So I understand the construction industry. I've also been in business for myself. I understand small business. And I also understand the education system. Not fully, but enough to say it puts the fire underneath me saying enough is enough. And that we need to do something different with our schools. I've got some ideas already on how we need to shift some money around. Michigan is about the size of Georgia. Which state spends more money, do you think? Any guess?
Michigan.
Michigan. Anybody know by how much more?
Twice.
How many million is that?
82 billion.
Ah, how many?
82 billion.
Billion. So Michigan doesn't have a money problem. Michigan has a spending problem.
Yes.
But it also has a problem of developing departments and programs that really should be brought back to the private sector. You know, just because they can drain our pocketbooks a lot doesn't mean they should start new programs and drain more out of our wallets. So anyways, that's a brief background. And that's one of the reasons why I'm running. I'm passionate, I'm fully committed, I'm fully experienced to be able to go to Lansing and deal with Democrats and Republicans. Sitting on a school board, if you know anything what Grant Public Schools went through, I sat there and I would sit there for 2-3 hours, people just with their jugular vein coming out of their necks, calling you names, saying stuff that they don't even know what they're talking about. And it was an exercise of endurance and patience. And that. So with that, I want you to be able to ask me any questions. That's just a brief synopsis. If you want to know more, just go to my website. I have on there, I have a plan. And you'll see about 10 things on there of what I would approach and how I would vote or possibly deal with. And that's why I have it on my website, so you can see specifically maybe certain bills, certain issues of how I would deal with that. So I open up the floor.
Okay, I'm going to ask the first question. Maybe it'll answer it. Maybe a lot of other ones will cancel yours, so I'm sorry. What is your belief in eagle?
You know, eagles are a fabulous bird.
Yeah.
Symbol of our nation.
Yeah.
My issue with Eagle is they overreach and they need to be reeled in. And I don't like it. White Cloud has dealt with it. I don't like it that they can step in, override the county, they override the local authorities, and they do what they want to do. And they're imposing things, and they're taking things in a direction. There's some things driving it. So that, they want to try to bring things back as natural as possible. You know and I know you can't do that. But at the same time, they're far overreaching their control and their power over the local authorities. And that they have a place to serve, but to come alongside the counties, come alongside the townships to work together. This thing of draining ponds and lakes and people losing lakefront property and that, not good.
All right, anybody? Okay, Nicole.
Yes.
I'm coming.
I forgot to ask the gentleman before. So how do you, I guess I don't know the best way to answer this question, but what do you think about bringing transparency, like allowing FOIA requests and that for our top government officials to be able to cut that tape that citizens are not allowed to ask questions to these people? How would you be in favor of something like that?
Oh, absolutely. By sitting on a local school board, any of you could FOIA the school for information, as long as it's not like on a closed meeting type of situation, but anything that has to deal with open meetings and that, absolutely. That's part of our problem, where you have people in power and they want you and I to live by certain guidelines, but they themselves do not have to. But yes.
Okay. Anybody? Question. Here we go.
Seeing you're in the education sector, would you support a voucher system for the state of Michigan?
Good question, Rick. Yes and no. A voucher system can end up where they control who gets the money. I don't believe the state can do something and give someone money without strings attached. Now, if we could do it without strings attached, yes. But then that also goes, where does that money come from, Rick? That voucher money is still coming from everybody within the community. And that's the problem. If you want to cut property tax, you have all your other local taxes attached to the property tax and that. So Christian schools, private schools, I do not want the government in their pocket. And let me give you a story. Back when my wife and I was just talking to her about this. Back when I was in college, and you gotta understand, I was wet behind the ears as a Christian. I didn't have maturity in me. I was only like in my it was my second year in Bible school. And because I headed up one of the student organizations, we came into the big meeting room. We all sat around a big table. At that time, there had to be a dozen and a half of us sitting around this table. And they wanted to become certified, regionally certified. And so we went around and they asked each person to give the reasons why the school should become regionally certified. So everybody gave their reason. They came to me. I'm telling you, I didn't know diddly squat. And I said, no. I said, we train pastors and we train missionaries. Why should some secular agency tell the school what they should be teaching, what they have to teach on any level, and how they need to give forth their credits? out of all that room, I'm the only one that stood against that. Because I'm a firm believer in autonomy. And if you have a Christian Bible school, don't you think they know how to train pastors and train missionaries from the Word of God? Sure. Someone from some agency to come in and say, okay, you need to revamp your program this way now. You need to add or subtract. Not on my watch. And I look back on that, and I just see how God began to give some discernment and wisdom and foresight of the decisions we make now affects down the road. And one of the reasons why I say I am a Republican statesman is because I believe that we got to make decisions now for the destiny of this state and for the destiny of our nation. It's not just for a certain generation. It's not just for a period of time. But our forefathers had foresight for a destiny of a nation. Benjamin Franklin said, you have a republic if you can keep it. Our founding fathers knew that without a moral people, our country cannot survive. Our Constitution is only as good as the morality of our nation. How many believe in this statement? It is the right of every U.S. citizen to vote and not to be denied. How many believe that? 19th Amendment. We don't need any more laws. Just enforce that one. U.S. citizens to vote. Period. Right? That's all. And so if we get back to the basics, whether it's education, whether it's economics, whether it's morals and ethics, you go back to the basics, you'll win. And I know Vince Lombardi, football coach of Green Bay. Love that guy. What a great coach. But you know one thing he did? He pulled these professional athletes in. And you know what he told them they were going to do? We're going back to the basics. You're going to learn to block. You're going to learn to tackle. What did they do? They became a great team. Why? He took a bunch of professionals who had a lot of skill and a lot of knowledge and brought them back to the basics. I believe you and I have a lot of skill. We are professional citizens. I believe in you. As a representative, it's not about me. Being a representative it's about we the people. It's about us together. And so when we come together and we'll stand up, not only for our Constitution, but for our rights, for our unalienable rights to speak, to live, to worship, to petition, to stand on the rights to have guns. You know what? No nation's going to take us down. But our government and people within the government are trying to bring us down. Anybody else?
Well, I want to go back to education.
Yes.
So we're 44th in the of the 50 states.
Yep.
And you say, yeah, I don't believe in a voucher system in a sense but we need competition.
Well,
we
do.
We just can't continue on this path. And the teachers union has got more power than it should have. And that's why the state of Indiana's got vouchers. That's where my daughter's at. And they're allowed so much per student. And I don't, just like me in the tire business, there's a certain bar. Mm-hmm. I have to have a license to be in business.
Well, and that goes back, Rick, to have a voucher system. What I'm saying is the government cannot have any strings attached to that. That's the important part. That's
why I'm electing you, because you got to fix that.
Yeah. Well, we, along with other representatives. Now, I have other approaches to deal with the public school. First of all, we need to get them off of the pension program and get them on their own 401s. Because that is draining more money in the public schools than anything. And I have said it before, that for every dollar we pay a teacher, we have to give the state of Michigan $45 to $55. That's 45 to 55% has to go to the state into the state pension fund.
But we're still 44 out of 50.
That's right.
So I mean, it's not about the money.
Well, it is, Rick, because
I mean, we're paying them to be poor educators.
okay, but here's the cycle on that. Why would I want to do that? Because first of all, that money that goes to the huge pension fund now stays within the local school district, of which then they're able to get better curriculum and better supplies. Now that's just on the public school level. When we start dealing with the vouchers, we're talking about giving it to private schools and homeschoolers. But there cannot be any strings attached to it. Here, Michigan for the last 25 years has lost 360,000 students, more than any other state in the union. In the next 20 years, they're expecting to lose another approximately, 270,000 students. We have double the increase the number of districts, and the size of schools have decreased, and at the same time, the amount of money given to the schools have decreased by about 50%. The numbers just do not work. And yet, they say they don't have the money, but there's less students. You know, it's one of those cycles that just keep going around. And until we fix some internal issues with the way the public schools are run, how they're funded, how much money they get, you know, because to get the vouchers, you're taking the money from the public school and giving it, which I believe is there. It's just that we have to cut other areas in the budget to get there. If you want to get rid of taxes, you can take that amount of money out of the general budget, and we're still spending more than Georgia. And that would take care of the amount of money for property tax. So in dealing with it, I have to deal with it on different angles, in a little bit at a time, to be able to get it to that point to where if you want vouchers, I'm not against them, but I'm not going to vote for them if there's any strings attached. It's not going to happen. I don't want that. Yes?
I'm a homeschooler and I don't want vouchers. I mean, I'm not saying I like them. Don't get me wrong. It would be nice to have some financial assistance in educating my children. Sometimes I'm floundering, but the minute you give money to, homeschoolers or whoever it is, there's always strings attached. Oh, well, you have to, if you want this money, you have to use this curriculum or this curriculum here.
Indiana.
Or, well, I don't know about Indiana's, but I know it is happening in other states. There are issues in other states where they have instituted vouchers, and they're sneaky. I call it incrementalism, guys. It's not the first time I've mentioned it. Incrementalism. They just incrementally inch their way in, and once you lose those rights, you don't get them back. So I personally, I don't know. Maybe there's a way to do it, but I haven't seen it yet, and I don't know that anything about Indiana.
With daycare, Michigan, they took regular people who had children in their homes, and their unions went right in and just started billing them for being union members that they were not.
Let me say something to you, not just as someone running for office, but just as being one of you and being a parent. There is something that has been lost, folks, in our country, and it's called sacrifice. We want everything handed to I just read a study comparing generations now, comparing to a generation reared back in the 50s and 60s. And they were talking about the resilience of what's there. When we begin to help the butterfly out of the cocoon, the butterfly will not be able to fly. And I agree, money isn't everything, but that is a mentality that we've got to change in society. Because we've gotten to the point thinking money fixes everything. And that we have to solve everything for everybody. Our life is designed to be sacrificial. No greater love hath a man to lay down than to lay his life down for another. Right now we've got men and women fighting over in the Middle East so you and I can sit here and talk about stuff like this. That's sacrifice. My mom and dad didn't give me everything, but I was taught I can go work. I came home, I was a latchkey kid. I didn't have a mom every time I came home. Mainly through high school, I didn't have a father at home. And I can honestly say my father never came to one single thing in my life. On any level, you name it, he wasn't there. Dad was working, and maybe some other things. But one thing that I was taught, and that is roll up your sleeves, smile, work, help others, and whatever it takes. And if that meant I had to pick up my sisters, my two younger sisters, go home with nobody there and take care of them, that's what I did. It's called sacrifice, folks. And sitting on a school board and listening, it's like we have to provide breakfast, lunch. We have to provide everything for everybody. What happens when they get older? What do they expect the government to be providing for them? I know that this is how our system operates. I know that. But also, part of what drives me is to try to change things and bring forth things to where it's giving a fishing pole to people instead of handing them fish. That is what I feel we need to be focusing on. How can what programs can we reduce? What things can we institute that literally are teaching people how to fish? On the educational level, we need to be having future farmers association in the public schools. It's been done away with. Where's the craftsman? I work in an industry, and I had men talking about it today. Where do they find the skilled trade? Whether it's a carpenter, whether it's a painter, whether it's a glazer, it's like, where do we get them? It's amazing buildings get built with the inadequacy that we have in our skilled trade. We ought to be teaching young men how to be plumbers, how to be electricians, how to be carpenters, how to be farmers. We need to be teaching that. And in closing, the proof in the pudding is pretty pathetic when my son went and worked at Tim Hortons and he could make a sandwich, but he couldn't pick up the knife and cut it. Somebody else had to come and cut that sandwich because of his age. Really. And if you work on a farm, how many times you might have a 10-year-old or 12-year-old driving that farm all, out through the field. This is what I'm saying that we've lost. And that type of thinking, that type of passion, that's what drives me. That's why I say that I'm for freedom, I'm for truth, but I'm for common sense. And Governor Huckabee, she said this: the battle is not between Republicans and Democrats. The battle is between normal and crazy. I don't know about you. I want to be on the side of the normal.
Amen.
And that's why I'm going to fight and function with common sense of what I've learned over the years as a father and as a husband, as a worker, as a businessman, whatever. I think God has definitely brought about a rounding and an ability in me to be able to function in all these areas so that I can deal with these issues in Lansing. Thank you. Yes.
I just want to wrap up real quick because we've talked about the voucher thing, and to Rick's point, vouchers done right are really a blessing because it puts parents in charge of where they need to go to school, and I know you agree with that. Now, if there's any connection with the state, if they have anything to say about the curriculum, if they have anything, then of course you don't want that. But freedom to use your voucher just the way you want to as a parent does create an atmosphere of competition. Would you agree with that? And I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
You need to agree with me because I'm your wife.
Great question there, lady. Great question. Well, listen, to understand, when my wife and I started
Just get it right.
yeah.
Yeah.
When my wife and I started homeschooling, the state of Michigan, this state was suing, going after homeschoolers, and praise God, they got the wrong and right family in Hudsonville, and the state lost. But that did not keep us from doing what was right, just because the state was going to breathe down and was breathing down our necks. And that's part of sacrifice, being willing to go against the tide and do right, knowing that eventually my wife and I have been part of that whole group that has enabled now the homeschoolers to be left alone and prepare the way for having a great homeschool base, throughout this nation. In fact, our kids, a couple of them, when they went to college, the college didn't even know how to deal with homeschoolers yet. And now they plead for homeschoolers. And that. Well, it was only 10 years ago. So thank you, and I hope you'll earn your vote.